I'd like first to thank you, Goran, very much for this insightful presentation and to check whether you can see my presentation. Excellent. And I also enjoyed your interesting insights. Indeed, the AI is apparently changing the whole paradigm about how we write proposal for Horizon Europe Arena. It, as Danish Science Minister pinpointed, it creates a lot of problems on different levels, as a variety of these different levels, some of them find this annoying, this boost in numbers of proposals with a questionable quality and questionable quality control. So that will be tackled in my presentation. That's a great intro to it. As well, some other points that you made are quite interesting for discussion, and I'd like to engage in that discussion at some point. However, we don't have time. So I'll start with my presentation. To come back to introduction, my name is Boško Nektarjević. My educational background is management, BBA at IFAM Paris, MBA from Solvay, Brussels Business School, and executive education at Harvard. While in terms of my career, I spent over 25 years assisting organizations design and implement EU-funded projects. I've trained and gave lectures to over 10,000 people about related topics with high evaluations, and in the process I learned quite a lot about EU projects and people as well. So let's start with simple truths that I've discovered along the way. We, as humans, are limited. Humans were not built for the digital age. Perhaps maybe to outperform lions and whenever our biological operational system was designed. Our memory is limited. Our attention span is short. Our processing capacity is narrow. So fatigue, stress, emotions, narratives, all of these affect how we think, how we decide, and how we work. So if we want to increase our intelligence, we only have three options: to use upgrades, better tools, then better networks, collective intelligence and teamwork, and personal discipline. So this is where AI comes in. Properly used, AI can extend human capabilities. It helps us identify key variables faster, understand complex patterns, and influence outcomes in a way that were impossible before. In other words, AI becomes a genuine upgrade to human intelligence. And as I've initially stated, properly used. But there is an other side of the story. Without quality control, publicly available AI is not your assistant, and it's an asset of its creators, potentially a tool of your adversaries. So it maximizes their productivity, not yours. And along the way, it brings hallucination, surveillance, influence, data extraction, real-time productivity attacks, and yes, through my experience, even deliberate mistakes and so on. So the real challenge today is not how to use AI. The challenge is how to control AI to ensure it does exactly what you want without acting against you, without wasting your time, and without breaking your workflow. And you can't achieve that with coding skills alone. You need a system, a structured approach, the right tools, primarily AI that controls other AI, and a personal discipline in implementing these structures and controlling the system that it works. So this is a major difference between people who get overwhelmed by AI and the people who become exponentially more capable because of using it. Now today I'll briefly guide you through the best practices in my own experience that show how AI stops being a toy and becomes a real increase in your professional capacity. So I'll guide you through 5 steps. Identification of key variables for success. We first identify the key variables to determine whether proposal wins or fails. And these include, of course, policy foundations and work program, cold text analysis, evaluation criteria. If these variables are not identified clearly, AI will be inventing them on its own. So the step 1 is to define reality before we let AI agent do anything. Then next step is data sets for quality control. Once we know the variables, then we build data sets that will respond to it and enable AI control. And those would include, of course, official policy documents, work program, cold text analysis with explanation about, I've accidentally, apologies, moved to different slide. Sorry. Yeah, I'm here back again. So those include, of course, official policy documents, data sets, work program, analysis of called keywords with explanation of why and why they matter and where they belong. Information from relevant projects, of course, what lies beyond the state of the art, and we can define the state of the art using ongoing and recently finished projects and the scientific publications, capacity and quality control of implementation data, stakeholder analysis, of course, the latest scientific and market insights. Think of these inputs, these steps, as choosing the ingredients or building blocks for those quality sets should serve for continuous quality control to ensure quality of AI outputs. And then thirdly, quality control using a competing AI. This is how I started initially while using commercial agents, building my own systems and structures. As I've concluded that if I start controlling quality and addressing mistakes of my whatever AI fantasies emerge, I'm actually losing an equivalent amount of time and reducing. So AI is actually reducing my productivity, not boosting it. So I thought, okay, so how can I match this speed, dynamics, capacity? And then I've started using competing. When I say competing, meaning from different companies, different large language learning models, AIs, to combine them to control one another, correct and advance them. So, and then I've developed this control on 3 levels, of course, at the project level and the section level. So specifically like looking at the entire project and looking at the excellence criterions and how to advance them, impact and implementation separately, and even below to across to subsections and across cutting issues to see that everything is covered. And then I'll move next to proposal writing, practical examples that show you a concrete model that I created together with a team, one company that's now fully operational to do a full proposal writing for one of the most competitive schemes. But this is not the pitch I'd like to make, as I don't want to market anyone's product. I just want to show the underlying principles, and for you can implement them and in your own work, and show you how I'm working and the best practices for my own work. So with these three foundations that we mentioned, we are ready for practical work, and then we use examples. So it's very similar when I train people, and at this stage when I train my AI, full proposal examples for structure and flow, section level examples for depth and tone, subsection level examples for presentation and detail. So AI learns what excellence looks like, not abstractly but concretely. Use similar approaches. That's almost exactly how I boost the learning curve with humans. So when you ask it to produce a section, it doesn't start from zero. It starts from calibrated, quality-controlled, evidence-based foundation. And this is how you get output that is consistent and aligned and evaluator-friendly. And lastly, of course, during the presentation, I will conclude with some final remarks how this system works, only if the system is complete. Now, when we talk about winning Horizon Europe projects or any complex strategic process, everything begins with identifying key variables for success. So if we don't identify the right variables at where we start, the entire proposal becomes guesswork, and guesswork loses points. So let's walk through those pillars to ensure that this is not happening. And the first one, of course, is policy and work program and call analysis and evaluation criteria. So before generating any single line of text, we need to download and train the AI by analyzing every relevant policy document, work program, call topic. So we identify keywords, phrases, work program logic, evaluation criteria, and this creates essentially a map of requirements. And once we have that map, AI is not longer hallucinating outside of that scope into the void. It is operating inside a precise evidence-based framework. Then we define disruptive change beyond the state of the art. So we collect data on mostly relevant projects and scientific publications, occasionally market analysis, sometimes as well stakeholder needs are necessary for this. And this is where we identify what is beyond SOTA, beyond state of the art, the frontier. Now, why? From the very beginning, we'd like to address disruptive changes and avoid these typical mistakes. Horizon Europe does not or should not fund more of the same. It tends to fund disruptive solutions that respond to policy needs and create capacity that did not exist before. And then maximizing impacts, and that's reverse engineering. Impact does not happen by accident when it happens. In many projects it does not. We reverse engineer them. We start from where the expected impacts in the program and then work backwards, like what needs to exist for these impacts to materialize, what capabilities we must build, which stakeholders must change behavior, what evidence must be delivered to the evaluators. That is the bottom line for the proposal to be funded. And these steps ensure your proposal is not just a line, but it's architected to deliver the exact impact evaluators want to see. And capacity, of course, synergy, quality of control, implementation. Now, this is finally we assess whether the consortium systems methodology actually deliver disruptive impacts being proposed. This is also where we analyze a little bit wider on stakeholders on how we do that. In other words, is the consortium the only and the best possible group, well, team ideally, capable of delivering the required strategic change? Now, if the answer is yes, then evaluator sees it. And if the answer is no, and this is where I, with its flexibility, helps swiftly restructure and redesign it until it becomes yes. So when all the 4 groups of variables are correctly identified, so that would be policy and disruption and impact variables and capacity, and then AI is calibrated to become a precision tool. So then we have a tool that operates within these constraints that we want it to do. I lost my slides again. Okay, I think this is the next one. So, as I said, before writing anything, I extracted and mapped all the keywords and key phrases from the cold text. And this step is essential. You can see it on the screen how variety of different words are actually analyzed in such a way so that we can see where they should exactly be used within the proposal, how they should be addressed. Every keyword, now you should be very thorough when you go to the cold text and relevant documents. Every word signals priority, mandatory requirement, hidden expectation evaluators instructed to look for. And then AI classifies this word into categories like objectives, impacts, methodology, capabilities, ethical requirements, implementation demands, so you know exactly where they should be addressed. And also helps AI to write sections that are relevant and compliant and evaluator friendly. So in this case, I'll use, for example, like 3 words: short development cycle, just to give you an idea. Now, this is not optional in this cold text. It comes from the draft text from the civic security work program. And this is from the call for 27 FCT1, I think. Tackling harmful online threats. So one of the keywords is short development cycle. Now this is something innovative. They're asking for the first time to be implemented within this framework to use short development cycle, because they need a system that could tackle threats much faster than what was previously possible. And this is not optional. It actually defines the entire methodological architecture of the project. So if your proposal does not operationalize this correctly, the evaluators see a mismatch instantly. Then we have another. I was a bit critical on this one. Police authorities, that we need to include at least involvement of 3 police authorities. Most likely they would be used for validation, but this keyword determines consortium composition and validation strategy and impact pathways. And then modular toolset, for example, the keyword shapes the technological ambition. So it means that your system must be expandable, upgradable, and adaptable to different online harms. So not just a prototype. And of course, these are just 3 examples from, as you could see, much wider list. And again, what I've shown you is not more than 100. Typically, we have more than 100 words in the initial analysis. Now, you can see here how I used AI to define state-of-the-art and push it far beyond the incremental improvements. And this is exactly my draft V2 proposal, created exactly for this presentation, only for this presentation, based on this forecasted call. And I've created it in literally a few hours. It took me less than 2-3 hours to have a full proposal in a V2 draft version. So this is where I want to show you how we can very swiftly go to V2 draft level, and I'll explain later why this is good, although the quality of the draft, of course, is far away from the one which would be evaluated positively. It only resembles high quality proposal. So now back to the topic, step one, define the state of the art. I started by feeding AI with structured data sets for AI, which would be relevant EU projects. Of course, their data from the websites, inquiries about them, and scientific publications, and market analysis. And AI maps all of these and produces sort of overview showing what exists, what works, and what does not. And that's the baseline. That's where we get the definition. And the next step is to use, I don't know why my slides are moving. And the step two then is to identify gaps or the blind spots. Now here we can use AI to find out where the current solutions cannot deliver what the work program requires, and highlight weaknesses or bottlenecks and create a problem-driven, evidence-based gap analysis, the kind of evaluators love. But in gap analysis, when you look at the state of the art, you need to be cautious a little, particularly in top-down actions and like innovation actions. So exactly, policy is setting direction, dynamics of changes. To illustrate that point, I'll give you an example from one of my previous projects that I submitted to counter exactly the same disinformation, hybrid threats. The limits of progress are exactly taking the bread and butter of what's so-called intelligence services, countering institutional storytelling and multimedia flooding tactics, so-called narratives, and lastly, all the bad marketing exploiting human cognitive weaknesses, selling on irrationality. So major stakeholders' interests are threatened by the capacity of to counter disinformation, particularly civic capacity. So I worked to develop new call is now focusing, as you can see, to work on, they focused us to work with policy, law enforcement agents, and focused us on police primarily. Next, disruptive advancement and not incremental advancements. Once we have a baseline, this is the crucial part. To prevent AI from generating incremental insights, I actually gave instructions and, of course, data sets, but instructions were key. They shape excellence action. So the project is critical for policy success, a driving force for policy implementation. And then the project responds to urgent and significant demand. That's a second set of key variables to address. Then with a disruptive innovation measurably better than existing ones and new capacity that previously did not exist. Now, these instructions force AI to think in terms of capability creation, structural change, new operational models, innovation that redefine the field. This is how we avoid the trap that we improved accuracy by 4%. No, Horizon Europe does not intend to fund small improvements. Sometimes it does, but the intent funds significant and disruptive changes, new capacity, new intelligence, new capability frameworks not available before. Now, in step 4, AI transforms this into a winning excellence narrative with sort of section feeling authoritative, and gap analysis that is precise, and ambition statement that is genuinely disruptive, and methodology that matches the level of impact demanded in the call. So this is how excellence section becomes more descriptive and becomes a strategic argument for why the project must be funded. So instead of letting AI invent innovation, I use AI to map present, to expose what's missing, and design a disruptive future, one that aligns perfectly with policy needs and evaluator expectations. To control AI and produce evaluator-ready proposal text, we first build internal datasets. This datasets guides every step of excellence, impact, and implementation. The work program and call dataset is essentially what I previously described, containing policy, keywords, phrases, rules, evaluation criteria from work program call. It's essentially constitution, ensuring every output is aligned, compliant, and the way that evaluators expect it. Then the relevant project and scientific evidence dataset, that's a state-of-the-art dataset. We load it from the previous EU project, research papers, market insights, and so to show what exists, what doesn't, where the true innovation is needed. It forms a baseline for advancing SOTA. Then the third set is policy and impact data set. Here we reverse engineer impact. So what is expected and necessary for impact to materialize. And we transform that into concrete project requirements. And then there's stakeholder and consortium capacity data set. Now we map end users, in this case, for example, police authority, industry as well, and research capacities. This ensures that the consortium is not just good, but the best capable of delivering disruptive impacts. And how it works together, they combined provide you quality control. They tell AI what's true, what's required, what must be delivered. And the result is proposal text, which is then consistent, aligned, and at the level of evaluators' impact. So, of course, you can see here that I tend to also build quality controls which are separate for different sections and subsections. So you can see examples like quality control, example for excellence. In this particular case, for this proposal, I gave AI framework to link every objective directly to the call text, anchor the methodology into the short development cycle, demonstrate beyond SOTA disruptive innovation, show interdisciplinarity, gender dimension, and so on. Then you can see in terms of the impact quality control, again, just an example of variables, which in this case would include that Europol, CEPOL, EUDA engagement is necessary. It must design a credible DEC plan and uptake strategy, including, of course, this redefined and redesigned first consortium structure and then stakeholders. Mandatory midterm practitioner assessment. So that guarantees that the text is not aspirational, it's structured, measurable, and exactly what would evaluators score highest in this section. And implementation, of course, quality control example with work packages that must align with this short development cycle approach. Tasks must be quantified, realistic, traceables to excellent, of course, establishing linkages, and so on and so on. Police authorities must have appear in the right places and with substance, with meaningful validation cases. This in many of my previous proposals which I've designed, and also I've reviewed many proposals from my colleagues and different companies were sent for pre-evaluations. And one of the typical mistakes that I would find is exactly this, use cases which are not fully in-depth, realistic, and justifiable, rather cosmetic for partner roles, and rather, I'd say, mostly AI generated. Then, of course, I say it's just an example, but each section gets its own AI instruction set of guardrails for quality control, ensuring precision, consistency, and evaluator level quality of the entire proposal. Now, what you see is a well-developed proposal writing system that looks like this, and it works in practice. You can find this software online, and it's called Typewriter. At some point in my career, I had 6 European Innovation Council accelerator proposals scored with the highest marks. So they received all the necessary goes. And shortly after, I received an email inviting me to become a proposal writer for a company whose ambition was simple: to dominate the entire EIC accelerator market. So they were already very good at the time. And I remember this was more than 5 years ago. At the time we had the SME instrument, and I can only imagine what they are using today internally. But their proposal writing engine since became a separate commercial product available online. And it works exactly as intended. It guides users through every requirement, every section, every constraint within the proposal. So there's a brief video you can see. I've instructed this tool to, I gave it a very simple instruction. I said, design a proposal countering online disinformation while ensuring for the business owners that they have a secure cockpit for business development, protected from malicious information sources, and capable of countering disinformation across multimedia channels in real time. And voila, this is the first draft being created. What you can see on the screen, I recorded the very initial, because of course my instructions were brief to provide you a learning experience on this tool, but we can here generate like I do for Horizon. Well, I have my own tool for accelerator call now developed, but as well I have tools for RIA and IA actions that help me just become faster. So, but remember, this was way before public AI tools existed. So what we were doing, we were building our own templates, train our models, and automated our logic and how they're supposed to work. Before we had more advanced language learning models and so on, I remember having a tool where on a click you would get suggestions, 3 to 5 suggestions on what needs to be inserted in that section of a project with models. So that was a kind of pre-accessory to this. I also worked with AI companies in Turkey before COVID at the time, delivering results even more fascinating than what you see right now. They could map instantly, real-time, online, all the information sources published by COVID-related, with COVID-related content, real-time intelligence generated by private AI ecosystem. So yes, I mean, you can use these tools to and pay to use, like Typewriter, ready-made system. It can create accelerator in minutes. But personally, it's probably not competitive unless you deeply understand accelerator. But personally, I prefer building my own tools, designed exactly for my needs, with my methodology to ensure this competitive edge, which is down the line the reason why we do all this and the critical variable for everything. Recap on how to make your own system very briefly. You need to identify your key variables. One of my mentors, Professor Steve Quarry, among the 4 key challenges for proposal writers, identified the first challenge as read and implement instructions. And now define all requirements, policy, work program, call text, and so on. AI cannot perform without very clear variables. Second step, build internal data sets for quality control. Third step, design AI quality control using a competitive AI tool. So when I was starting, and you can still do that, and you can perform very well while mixing, for example, I don't know, ChatGPT with a competing AI agent. competing, meaning the one which will not reinforce the same LLMs, but it will actually counter that and control quality, and you can then verify whether these results are accurate. And if some of them are, they can be integrated into another model and vice versa. So while playing between them, you get the full level, maximum accuracy, and you increase your speed. And then, of course, as I recommended, use quality control on different levels to ensure that you get optimal, fully competitive sections, which will get the best marks. And then use practical examples to train the system. Provide examples of strong proposal, section, arguments, methodology, impact, so that transforms the end result. So AI learns style, depth, tone, evaluated logic, not just vocabulary and mixed word fantasies. And then, of course, integrate that into one coherent system, so that when it's automated, it very, very swiftly you get to the version 1, version 2 of your draft proposal. And then once you're at this level of version 2 proposal, that helps greatly to steer partners, the experts you're working with, where their inputs are needed, and you can then work together with them on advancing proposal, and also, again, AI can provide guidance for their inputs. So this is very, very helpful, and it also extends your capacity at this level to swiftly develop next drafts combining those inputs, and if changes are needed, you can as well do them very swiftly with a great flexibility throughout the proposal. So you can essentially explore different combinations, structures of consortium, cost structures, different approaches in terms of what we want to achieve in terms of the objectives, expanding, reducing scope, playing with impacts of pathways, and readjusting the whole proposal. It becomes very, very fast, and it becomes very, very easy to do and effective to get the version final to perfection. So that's why it's very, very useful. Now, when we think about popular tools, probably you have your own favorites in your choice, and I'm not into business of marketing of any of them. So I took the list that ChatGPT recommended as the most popular. I have my own preferences. I've started with combining the two competing agents and different companies, different countries, different everything. Gradually, I've learned that some of my colleagues were far more advanced in using tools which were used for different in different parts of the process, like intelligence gathering, structuring, drafting, validation, polishing, visualization, as Goran shown you approach between his traditional creation of these graphs and then the tool that he used. And I found that some people are very well versed in those tools better than me. So I started integrating those tools when they show me how, and I've learned the value of integrating high quality infographics emerging in seconds, automated Gantt charts in tables, and so on, which then would enable really fast advancements. So typically I'd use them in the final phase, and I'd like to come back also to a very important point that adding expert inputs and human polishing that's where real competitive edge emerges. and depending on the consortium and the time and the process of design of the proposal and communication within the consortium, at least 2 cycles of these inputs would ensure an adequate level of human refinement and quality. With AI system in place, those adjustments are very, very easy and fast, and we have a boost, actually explosion of possibilities on how to advance proposals swiftly and effectively. Now, I'll conclude this lecture with a few recommendations on what not to do. So don't use AI without well thought through quality system, and typically, in my experience, you should do it and perform that using competing AI at each step, very disciplined. Whatever one AI produces, control with another one. Otherwise, usage of AI will reduce your productivity and disrupt your workflow with its mistakes and fantasies. Then don't use AI with confidential project data on open platforms. So you can play with segments. Ideally, you divide it in sections, subsections, and so on. Ideally, you build your internal AI system and then work with it. Don't submit AI-generated content without substantial human refinement. Don't forget that evaluators seek genuine innovation, not formulated responses that would just respond in a different combination of words that AI learned, maybe perhaps meaning or with lack of assessment whether this is possible for implementation. And don't let AI compromise the authentic voice of your consortium, because if you had started properly and use AI to find the best possible team and the best possible consortium, then actually you're working with those who are outstanding in their own respective fields, and with synergy between us, AI cannot at this level compete with the synergy of the top level experts in their respective fields working together with this good layer, this template that AI produces, and this swift changes that it enables to custom-made their inputs. So I'll conclude with that, and thank you for attention and the opportunity to address you. And if you have any questions, I don't know how the webinar is structured. Should they be addressed now or later, or maybe sent by email in case that you have questions and they appear later at some later point? Please don't hesitate to contact me via email. Thank you.